Hello everybody, welcome back to the Retro Horror Academy. My name is Daniel Richardson, and tonight we're going to be looking at the year in horror 1942. We got 10, that's right, 10 horror films from this year that we're going to be ranking. We got 3 inductees into the Horror Hall of Fame. But of course, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's do what we always do. Let's take a look at what the big story was coming out of that year. In 1942, the big story was Val Lewton. He's a producer. He'd done some work previously, but he actually goes to RKO and gets moved to become the head of their horror division. And so his plan was he wanted to make more adult-oriented films. And I don't mean like sleazy or sex or anything like that, because it's fucking 40s. I mean more grown-up type horror films, not just monster mash movies. He's really wanting to kind of add suspense and whatever, a film noir to his films. More artsy, if you will. And and of course it would pay off, and his style and works would really influence horror for the next decade. Like the rest of the 40s, you can definitely draw a line to, his work or whatever. So, alright guys, so as mentioned before, we do have 3 new inductees into the Horror Hall of Fame, so let's not waste any time. Up first, we got... And if I'm butchering these names, I apologize. I don't know names. And I guess I could take the time to go to translate and have the computer tell me, but what's the fun in that? We got Louis Buñuel. He is a Spanish filmmaker. He's considered one of the all-time greats and one of the most influential filmmakers of all time. He's known for his avant-garde surrealism and political commentary. He collaborated with the surrealist painter Salvador Dali, and really kind of kick-started the whole cinematic surrealism movement there in the early days of cinema. He's known for his film, see if I get this name right, the Illusion Dog, and of course we know him from this channel for The Fall of the House of Usher. So, director with that really, and the thing is, like, even though, his horror resume is a little scant, when you look at his other films, he has that nightmarish quality to him. He's very, kind of, even though it's not gothic, like, the German expression, people would be, he was like Tim Burton. He still kind of had this nightmare world that he would build, even if it wasn't a horror film. So, I definitely believe, he deserves his place here among the greats in our Horror Hall of Fame. So congratulations, Louis Buñuel. Next, we're moving on to Victor Hugo. He was a French writer, considered one of the greatest writers of all time. His most famous novels would probably have to be The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Les Miserables. I don't even know if I'm ever pronouncing that right. I read that, and I just like, it can't be what I said. Les Miserables, right? That's what it should be? Okay, Les Miserables. He was on the forefront of the romantic literary movement. He was a poet, an artist, a politician. I mean, really well known, in his home country. Some of the movies, he'd be known for. Clearly, the one version we didn't do was the 1939 version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Just felt that was more on the adventure side of things. Not a whole lot of horror going on there. Which I know the argument can be made, earlier films were kind of like that. But I feel like at this point, horror's been established. So at this point, it was definitely not a horror film. But what we know him on with this channel would be the 1923 version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And of course, The Man Who Laughs. Again, like a lot of the authors who got put into our Horror Hall of Fame, maybe they only have 1 or 2 hits. But there were some pretty good hits. And again, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, not only is it, the movie itself or the character itself, a staple in early, silent horror, the Hunchback character, would be kind of a staple as like, he'd transcend that, and then every time you see some kind of assistant or some kind of, baddie, he would have that physical deformity. Which is not to say that's, you should equate a physical deformity with evilness, but that's what they did back in the movies back in the day. That was what they did, So, again, he contributes so much to the horror genre. So, yeah, he definitely deserves his place right here as well. And that leaves our last person, Oscar Misaal. Again, if I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. He was an American filmmaker. He was regarded as one of the first major African American filmmakers. He was also the most successful African American filmmaker in the first half of the 20th century. He was the first African American to have his own production company that was completely black owned, which was very rare back then. As far as horror goes, he only has one thing that we've covered on this show, and that was a spider's web. And you're probably asking, like, come on. That's not even, that's kind of a forgotten movie or whatever, and he only did one. But you know what? The fact that, he was like the first black filmmaker, that should count for a lot right there. So you know what? We're throwing him in there. So there you go. Louis Buñuel, Victor Hugo, and Oscar Misaw. They're your 3 inductees this year for the Horror Hall of Fame. How was 1942 if, like, black people being integrated into, like, Hall of Fame? I know Gone to Win, that black chick won the Academy Award then. So, yeah, this would have been a shock back in 1942 if I was to announce it then that, he's in. So, yeah, it'll be all right. You'd have some naysayers, I'm sure, but, overall, fuck them. So, anyways, moving on now, let's get to our top 10 of 1942. We're getting back now where we're able now to cut movies from the list and, to actually make a top 10 instead of just, doing a top 9 or 8 or whatever, or just having 10 only. Now it's like, no, we had to actually cut movies from this. So we're going to start things off with number 10, Dr. Renault's Secret. Taking a drink. So, our main character, he goes out to this house/compound, I guess, kind of in this remote area where Dr. Renault's doing his experiments and whatnot, doing his scientific testing, if you will. Of course, living with him is his niece, who also happens to be the main character's fiance. And then you also have his assistant, who is this like weird guy who kind of has a secret of his own. Upon its release, this was compared a lot to The Island of Dr. Monroe, even though they really only have like one thing kind of in common, which is, the animal, or, experiments making people animals or whatever. And that's really it. But that's, other than that, there's really that's really the only comparison you can really make with that, I would think. This was put on a double bill with the film The Undying Monster, which I'm sure we'll be talking about here shortly. And then the screenplay was actually based on an old lost film from 1927 called The Wizard, which ironically enough was written or based on a novel that was written by a recently inducted Horror Hall of Famer Gaston Leroux. The story was called Baloo, I believe. I like this movie. This was, again, we've seen so many mad scientists experiment on people kind of thing, making creatures or whatnot. We're going to see a few more this year as well. So, but again, I thought the performances was good. I thought, George Zuko as Dr. Renault, I thought he did really good. I've been really enjoying his performances in these movies recently. And I thought, what's his name? Like J. Carroll Naish, I think that's how you pronounce it. He plays, what was his name? Like Java or something like that? Java? I don't know. He was the assistant guy. The monkey man, pretty much. I thought he did really good. I'm not, again, I'm not familiar with, at least not that I know of, Naish, but want to see more from this guy, and hopefully he'll be a reoccurring guy. I feel like the name looks familiar, but I couldn't tell you what he was in. So hopefully I'll see more of this guy as time goes on. One thing I always kind of hate about these films was, you always have this misunderstood monster, or sometimes just mad scientist who is doing things for the right reasons, but unfortunately they do kind of cross that line. They end up killing people, so they never really kind of get off the hook. The filmmakers, I'm assuming the production code, the people behind that, weren't going to let that happen. So they always had to get their comeuppance. So even if the monster has a heart of gold, if he killed anybody, fuck you, you're dead. And that's what they did. And I felt like the character here was falls in that category pretty well, because like everybody he takes out, yeah, maybe they didn't need to be murdered, but they were definitely dicks. Like they definitely had it coming to them. They had something coming to them, maybe like a severe beating. But either way, I don't know. I always kind of felt bad when these monsters kind of meet their end, especially the ones that have like the heart of gold, because it's like, come on, he didn't need to die. This thing has a 6.1 on IMDb, and yeah, it seems about right. I can agree with that. Seems like a fair score. So yeah, That's Dr. Renault's Secret. So coming at number 9, The Undying Monster. So you got this, back in the old days, you got this kind of well-to-do family who has this house up on the hill, or what's left of this family. I think there's only like siblings left, but or maybe there's a parent or grandparent. I don't remember. These all kind of blur together sometimes. I do apologize. But there is the remaining members of this family out on this hill, and there's like a legend that if they go out on a cold, frosty night, that they will meet their death by this undying monster. This is based on a novel as well, and this, like I mentioned before, this was double billed with Dr. Renault's Secret. The reviews were mixed. A lot of them really praised the look and atmosphere of this movie, kind of comparing it to the Universal films at the time. But everything else kind of took a hit with this film. Like no one else, they didn't really care for this thing. For me personally, I'm kind of on the fence with this thing. I thought, again, the look did look good. I thought the acting was, okay. I thought storyline wasn't bad. I don't know. The ending kind of throws you for a loop because, the whole time they're hiding something, and I'm okay with that. But then when you find out this is going to be a werewolf movie, but in the end, when it's revealed, which character is the werewolf, this one guy's like, they're like, well, I can't put that in a medical journal. You go, oh no, it's already in a medical journal. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, the idea of people thinking they're werewolves, mentally, sure, that's, lunacy, whatever, lunatic. That's where the name comes from. The full moon comes out, they go crazy. But here, they're like, oh no, the actual physical transformation into a werewolf is already up to date with medical science. You can put it in your report. I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know. It's just, I thought it was just kind of wacky. But aside from that, it is what it is. I'm not gonna lie, there's a small handful of werewolf movies that just came out around the same time. So the Wolfman did something right. It came out and people were trying to jump on that bandwagon, which it's not a bad thing. But like I said, I don't know, this movie's all right. It also got a 6.1 on IMDb. Maybe a little generous, but it's not too far off. So, but yeah, that's The Undying Monster. Take it in dark. So up next, at number 8, we have Night Monster. A lot of monsters in this lineup here. So anyways, it's like mad doctors, mad monsters. It's just like, I don't know. We run the gamut here. Just a couple of words, a couple of nouns, a couple of adjectives. We just run with it. The Night Monster. So we got this old guy he's crippled. He's in a wheelchair. And he invites all these doctors out. And it turned out these doctors were all the ones that tried to work on him, tried to fix him, get him out of his chair or whatever. And, of course, they all failed. But, he brings them out to his, mansion that's in the middle of nowhere. And then they start, getting killed one by one, it's funny because this movie, Bela Lugosi and Lionel Atwill, they have, like, top billing. They are, like, the two guys that they're advertising here. But then when you actually watch the movie, it's like, well, Bela Lugosi's just the butler. And don't get me wrong, he's in it, but it's like, it's a small role. And then, like, Lionel Atwill, he's only in for, like, 2 or 3 scenes at most. And that's all in the beginning. So it's just like, It just reminds me of, like, back in the 80s when Trick or Treat came out. And they got in that movie, you had one scene with Gene Simmons and a cameo by Ozzy Osbourne. And then they put those two names on top of the poster, like, oh, it's, Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne. Buy this VHS right now. Or in my case, a DVD. And then I bought it thinking, like, all right, Gene Simmons, Ozzy Osbourne. It's like, nope, not at all. So, yeah, it kind of reminds me of the same thing. Just imagine, like, if you're a kid or just a horror fan, and you're like, at the theater and you see, like, oh, wow, Bela Lugosi, Lionel Atwill. That's 2 horror heavyweights. In The Night Monster? Let's check it out. And then you realize, oh, wow, we've been hoodwinked. They're not even in it that much. So, anyways, this plot is kind of similar to that of Dr. X's. And it's just kind of ironic because Lionel Atwill would actually, he was in that movie as well as, the doctor. And he's a doctor in this movie as well. So that's kind of funny to think about. The reviews here, they were kind of mixed to negative when this thing came out. Not a lot of love for this movie, I guess. Universal trying to constantly save money. The castle that's used in this, or the house that burns down actually, was actually the castle they used for the ghost of Frankenstein later on. So it's the same shot of, like, the place burning up or whatever, which I couldn't tell was a castle here. I just thought it was like, oh, a stone house or whatever. So I didn't think nothing of it. But yeah, read that, like, oh, okay, that's kind of funny. And then, in another case of trying to reuse some stuff, the scene, any scene they showed of like the foggy forest by itself, those were taken from the Wolfman. So there you go. They're definitely cutting corners here. I can appreciate that. Alfred Hitchcock, apparently, he attended the premiere of this movie, and he was a fan. He liked it, and actually cast Janet Shaw in his next film, Shadow of Doubt. So that's kind of neat. I always love hearing when Hollywood elites like these B movies, if you will. So, and this was double billed with The Mummy's Tomb. So, for me, I like this movie. I actually thought it was good. The storyline has been done to death. I mean, how many times have we had a mad scientist of any type? I guess this guy ain't really a scientist per se, but he uses science to a certain degree. But how often do you get the mad scientist who's just trying to take his frustrations out on people, and he decides to do it one at a time? He's going to take them all out one at a time. So in that sense, it's like it was giving us nothing new, but at the same time, I thought the story was good. It was interesting because you're trying to figure out, like, well, how's he doing it? Like, the guy in the wheelchair is doing something. Like, he's up to something, but like, how? And so, I don't know. I thought that was interesting to kind of, it kept me guessing, trying to figure that out. So I like that. Disappointed that Lionel Atwill wasn't in it that much. Like I said, Bela Lugosi was in it, but it seems like anymore when Bella's in these movies, he is like been reduced like to small butler role. So it's like, I'm kind of used to it at this point, but Lionel Atwill, I'm becoming a big fan of, so I was kind of disappointed he wasn't in it. So this has a 6.2 on IMDb. And a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it should have a higher IMDb rating, Rotten Tomatoes rating. But the IMDb seems about right. It seems be spot on in the sixes. So yeah, that's fair. So yes, that was number 8, Night Monster. So that brings us now to the Mad Doctor of Market Street. So basically, you got this mad scientist who's doing experiments, and he gets busted. And of course, unfortunately, his experiments has resulted in an accidental death of his patient, which again, the patient was willing. It was an accident, however, still illegal. They don't like that back then. So he has to flee the town. Gets on a cruise ship, and the cruise ship goes down. And so him and a handful of other survivors end up washing up on this island where basically this mad doctor ends up kind of taking over the island and becomes like the leader, and so the other survivors have to kind of band together to bring him down. This was from the same writing directing team that did Invisible Ghosts, which really surprised me because honestly, I did not like Invisible Ghosts. I thought that movie sucked. When I heard about that and then watched this movie, I was like, oh wow, like they've gotten better because that first movie was not good. This was double billed with Wolfman. Nice to see Universal packaging these good movies together. I always kind of wonder what would be like, kind of be around back then, and that'd be like your double feature. I don't know. I just feel like I get like nostalgia for a time I was never even around in. I just think it'd be kind of interesting. This kind of had a pseudo follow up with the movie Abbott Costello film Pardon My Sarong. If I'm saying that right. I've never seen it. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any Abbott Costello movies, and that does include the monster movies that will come up later on. I just never got around to it. I don't know. I don't know how it's connected. I couldn't find the connection. I didn't watch the movie, so I have no idea. But either way, they said it's kind of a pseudo follow-up, so there you go. When this thing came out, though, bad reviews. And the last little nugget of tidbit here, the boxer was actually a wrestler, and he wrestled in the 1920 Olympics for the U.S., and guess what? Brought home the silver medal, so hey, good on you. I actually really like this movie. I thought the storyline was really good. Again, my boy Lionel Atwill's in it, so I'm always going to, kind of praise this guy. I'm definitely swinging on this dude's nuts from today. But no, I thought he played his part perfectly, very sinister. The group, the survivors, for the most part, were very likable. You did kind of root for them, and they were kind of put in a hopeless situation. Like a lot of times, like, I don't know, you kind of know how they're going to get out of it, but here it's like, well, Lionel, not only is he psychotic, he's got the entire like tribe, and they're on this like shipwreck or this deserted island. So it's like, or I guess it's not deserted, it's inhabited, but they're on this like wild island, and so you're trying to figure out, how are they going to get out of this? And so I don't know, it was very interesting. It kept my attention. Like I was engaged the entire time. I love the comeuppance that the Mad Doctor gets, and I love the fact too that like, again, even when he gets taken out by the, eventually the Islanders kind of see through his bullshit. They kind of revere him as a god initially, but once it's clear he's not, they turn on him and burn his ass at the stake. However, it doesn't just let the other people off the hook, you know. They're still going to hunt them, and I'm like, holy, I don't know. I dug it. I really dug it. I love the kind of, I know these aren't cannibal movies, but it kind of falls in line with, you know, Islanders, Tribesmen, you know, again, like Cannibal Holocaust, The Green Inferno, stuff like that. I love those kind of movies. And even though this isn't anywhere on those levels as far as like gore or, you know, notoriety, I still thought this was really good. Unfortunately, it got a 5.2 on IMDb, and I think that's a little low, but hey, it is what it is. So anyways, yeah, that's number 7. That is The Mad Doctor of Market Street. So that now brings us to number 6, and that is The Mad Monster. Another thing that's mad, another monster. So basically, this scientist decides he's going to turn his handyman, who's a bit slow. He's not all there. He is mentally challenged. But he's going to turn him into a werewolf just because he can. He had theories that he can turn people into creatures, and then not only does he do it, he wants to prove to everybody who basically laughed at him or scoffed at him that he can do it, and he's going to get his revenge on those people as well. So this thing stars George Zucco as the mad scientist and Glenn Strange, which the only reason I kind of bring him up is just because he would go on to play Frankenstein's monster and appear in a handful of Universal movies. First time I saw him, I probably did see him in one of the Universal movies, just didn't recognize it. But first time on this show we've covered a Glenn Strange movie, so I was like, all right, kind of interested to see what we got going on here. Due to the scenes of the blood transfusions, this movie is actually banned in the UK, and they wouldn't actually show it in its entirety until 1952. So there's that. Yeah, this thing, it got mixed reviews when it came out. No one was really feeling it for the most part. However, the funny thing is now it's considered one of the worst films of all time, and not just horror films. I mean, just straight up worst movie of all time, or on the list, which is not gonna lie. Spoiler alert for my review coming up. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. At an hour and 17 minutes, this is actually the longest B movie that Poverty Row ever made in the 40s. So, yeah, even though it seems really short to me, well, the time seems short to me. When you actually watch it, you're like, oh shit, this thing's never going to end, is it? So yeah, I was not a fan of this movie at all. In fact, I just didn't like it. To me, it felt like a poor man's version of the Man-Made Monster, the one where Lionel Atwill and Lon Chaney Jr., where he, after the guy, survives a train crash, he ends up, experimenting on him and turns him into a big electrical monster, which I wasn't big on that either, or as much. But this just felt like beat for beat, almost the same damn movie. And then on top of that, like George Strange, his performance here, and I'm not going to say he's a bad actor because I haven't seen him do anything else, and normally he's probably in a monster outfit, so whatever. But in this movie, with this film, it was just bad. And again, this is like, I don't know, this is a low budget movie, so the version I got to watch was very grainy and dark, and that kind of didn't help it any, but the movie itself was just bad. So yeah, I cannot recommend this. IMDb has it ranked at 3.5, and you know what? Yeah, I'd go even lower than that. How it got this high up on the list is astounding to me. But again, I'm part of a group, and compromise. So anyways, The Mad Monster. So now we're moving on to number 5 in a film called The Boogeyman Will Get You. A young girl ends up trying to buy and turn this historical house into a hotel. However, there's some weird people living there, and there are dead bodies in the basement. Who knew? So this would be the last film that Boris Karloff would do for Columbia under his current contract and everything. At the time, he was actually he split his time between doing movies, and he was on the stage play Arsenic and Old Lace. And that was a huge hit at the time. So, yeah, this studio is just trying to cash in on that and do a movie that's kind of... It's not fully similar, but just the kooky people who live in this house. I mean, it's a horror comedy, so, yeah, they're definitely trying to get on that. And not just that, but once again, Boris Karloff, he plays a mad scientist because, of course he does. Yeah, so, I thought this was kind of a funny thing I read. So, I guess at the time... the studio was trying to, as a publicity stunt, they decided to try to conduct a poll with film critics. And the question was like, who is the top 10 movie villains of all time? And of course, that's crazy thinking back then because it's like movies only been around for a handful of decades, but whatever. But they figured since they got Boris Karloff and Peter Lorre that they would have Frankenstein's monster or Peter Lorre from M or what was the movie he did that I really liked? He had to wear the goggles and shit. I don't know. Love that movie where he sees himself in the mirror and it's talking to him doing weird stuff. I'm blanking. But anyways, that movie. So, I mean, they just kind of write and thinking like, oh, yeah, Boris Karloff, Peter Lorre. We got two of the, big heavies here. And wasn't Peter Lorre also the heavy in Casablanca as well? Or was he a good guy? He had to be a bad guy. Either way, though, they were hoping that, that critics would be like, oh, yeah, Boris Karloff, Peter Lorre, that's your guys. However, the top 3 in their 10 would wind up being all Disney characters. So they, at number 1, they had the witch from Snow White. They had the wolf from Three Little Pigs. And then they had the cat from the Pinocchio movie. So it's like, yeah, it didn't go the way they thought it was going to go. And like, the witch from Wizard of Oz had to be on there. And, so it's just like, clearly their boys didn't make it to the top like that would. And so they canceled that stunt. So, that's kind of funny. When this movie came out, it did receive some mixed reviews. Again, people weren't really feeling this one. This is the second time that Boris Karloff and Peter Lorre would team up. The first time was a film called You'll Find Out from 1940, which I believe that was a movie that we cut. It was on our list. We were voting on which one's going to make it, which one's not, and it didn't make the list. And honestly, I didn't see it, so that's why I voted pretty low on my list. Which may not be fair, but it is what it is. So anyways, so The Boogeyman Will Get You. I liked it. I thought it was good. I thought the comedy worked well. Rustle my papers here. I thought the comedy worked well. I thought anytime you saw Peter Lorre and Boris Karloff together, they had this great chemistry, and their comedy worked surprisingly well. Like those scenes with those guys just talking was just brilliant. So yeah, I don't know. I thought that was good. The other characters, again, you can definitely see the parallels to Arsenic and Old Lace. But even with that in mind, it didn't hurt this movie at all, I didn't think. However, this movie did only get a 5.8 on IMDb currently, which, I don't know, seems a little... I guess that's probably on Ticket, actually, because I was a little more forgiving. Because, again, it's like, I don't know, there's too many serious mad science monster movies going on this time. So whenever I get a horror comedy in this era, I'm pretty grateful. Which is the opposite today. Today I hate horror comedies. I'd rather just watch straight horror, but... watching all these movies back here, it's nice to break it up with, horror comedy every now and then. So anyway, that is The Boogeyman Will Get You. So, that now brings us to number 4, and that is The Corpse Vanishes. So basically, you got this mad scientist, who knew, this old lady, and then she has 2 kids. One of them's a little person, and then the other one is kind of like a mentally challenged ogre of a guy. But their plan is they basically kill all these brides right on their wedding day, steal the body, and then, somehow, transfer their life essence, I guess, over to the scientist's wife, who is, is keeping her, young and, virile or whatever. So, that movie... It has better reviews now, but when it came out, it got shit on big time. In fact, I don't even think it's really that high now. I just think that, people kind of see it for what it is, because, everything I read was just like, well, for its time or whatever. However, I thought it was interesting that this was actually on, and that's actually where I first saw it, was on Mystery Science Theater 3000. And anyway, I guess that crew absolutely hated it. Unanimously across the table, hands down, one of the worst films they ever had to do. So I thought that was kind of funny. They reused the music in this movie, in this movie, from the Vampire Bat, which they did 2 or 3 years prior to this. So yeah, nice to see we're still doing that whole thing. I actually like this movie. I don't know. Again, it's standard for the time, but just the idea that they're killing these brides and taking their essence out, it's pretty brutal. And even with the haste code out there, there's some sleaziness in this. Like they said, that, the kind of simpleton son, he's constantly creeping down and trying to fill up the bodies. And some of them are dead. Some of them are in a suspended animated state or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, I was kind of surprised by that. The storyline's good. The characters were likable. I thought Bela Lugosi was great. His wife's a bit of a cunt, but I guess she kind of had to be because, again, that's kind of the character here. No, I gave this kind of a thumbs up. I enjoyed it. However, I'm probably one of the only ones. It got a 4.5 on IMDb, so, it is what it is. But, yeah, the corpse vanishes. So now we're moving on to our top 3 and our award winners. So, the winner of the Bronze Skull Award coming in at number 3. I'm talking about Cat People. This American ends up marrying this girl from Serbia. Sorry, I'm going to take a quick drink. So, American marries this girl from Serbia. And they get married, but she's afraid to sleep with him because there's a legend from her homeland that, if they get intimate, she will turn into a cat person. Yeah. Okay, so this was when Val Lewton became the head of RKO low-budget horror department. And this was the movie, first movie he comes out with. He assembled a team in this department that would comprise of everybody who worked on this movie. The director, his name's like Jacques Tourneau. I don't know. I'm horrible with names. You guys know that. But the writer and the editor as well. Like those 4 came together. And not only did they make this movie, but they were kind of the head of this RKO or this new RKO horror department. And so anyway, then he worked with these guys previously, so he had kind of a working relationship with them. This movie is known because its big claim to fame, aside from kind of ushering in this new style of horror, this more adult-oriented movies, it is the first one that had a jump scare. That's right. Which he called the bus, which basically what it was in the scene, she's being stalked. The secretary, the main guy's secretary, who kind of has a crush on him, and he kind of likes her too. But again, he's married. But the Catwoman is jealous, and so she's kind of stalking her. And the scene plays up because the woman's walking, but she can hear footsteps behind her, and she's trying to hurry up. And then at the last second, she turns around, and there's nothing there. And then a bus pulls up. Oh, shit. Right next to her, you hear the airline, the brakes let go, and a big jump scare. So, it's got that going for it. When this came out, it's really interesting. So, I never done research. This is the first time I ever do research on movies. Just from when I watched it for the first time, I watched this movie like years ago before I rewatched it for, making this list. But when I watched it years ago, at that time, from what I was hearing, it was like lauded or, as like classic. It's a horror classic. When I did my research, it was interesting that, it was kind of met with, mixed reviews then, in the sense that everyone was like, half the crowd, liked it. They, enjoyed this more adult-oriented, fare. But then you had some that just were bored by it and thought that it was just too much melodrama and just too much whatever. And then when I read, the current reviews, it was kind of the same thing where some people are just like, oh, this is a classic, and horror owes a lot to this, which I'm not denying that. Definitely the jump scares, the dark, shadowy look of the film, and the atmosphere, and again, the fact that it's not just pandering to Saturday morning matinee kids. It's like, no, this is for your parents right here. But you got some people just like, even now, are just like, yeah, it's too slow. Too much melodrama, it's kind of a silly premise, whatever. And I don't know. I just thought that was interesting because it's like, I figure I'll be reading nothing but like great glowing reviews. But one of the biggest good review is from Roger Ebert. So, I mean, clearly if he's got his stamp of approval on it, that's going to carry a lot more weight, even though it may not be a huge portion of the people. So, yeah, mixed reviews then, mixed reviews now. But regardless of those mixed reviews, this thing was a box office success. And no one knows the exact number it made. I read as low as 3 million all the way up to like 10 or 11 million. So it's like, who knows? But either way, back then, that's a lot of fucking cheddar, so pretty good. This was followed up by a sequel, The Curse of the Cat People. And then it was followed up by kind of a spinoff. But a lot of people think that this spinoff was almost a cash-in. So the guy who plays the doctor in this movie, I can't think. Kent Smith, I think, maybe the guy. Or was it Tom Conway? I don't know. Whichever one. I think it's Tom Conway, actually, was the doctor. Either way, though, he plays in another movie called The Seventh Victim. Also by RKO. I think it's also produced by Val Lewton. But anyways, in that movie, he had a totally different name. But I guess, and he dies in this movie. But then when that movie comes out, they change his name to this character. And then he even kind of references it. He's like, oh yeah, I knew this, lady who, had this, psychotic episode or whatever. And it's just like, oh, I guess they just brought him back from the dead to cash in on this. And not even a sequel, just, a random other movie that just had like one line in his name change, and that's enough to tie together. But I mean, Cloverfield pretty much is the same thing now anyway, so why not? Anyways, and then this would get remade in the 1980s, under the cat people. So, all right, okay, quick drink. Sorry. See, like the older I get, the more I talk, my mouth gets drier quicker. I apologize for that. So apparently, Simone Simon was a bit of a bitch. She clashed with like all of her co-stars, the director, and I guess she even had a reputation for being a bit temperamental. But I don't know. I've read nothing but like unpleasantness about her. Now again, who knows? But thought that was kind of interesting. I guess this would actually kind of kickstart a cycle of films where in every movie, there's a woman who, because of some kind of traumatic past or maybe I don't know, some trauma that's in her family, she believes that she will turn into a monster and kill either her, boyfriend or husband or fiance or kids even. I don't know. But this did definitely, again, horror's like that. When something, works, they quickly cash in on it. So there you go. It started outside. And not only that, but also the look, style, and feel of this movie. Again, this kind of incorporated elements of noir. We had shadows and, again, more adult-oriented, vibes and all that stuff. And so, again, everybody grabbed that and ran with it as well. This movie was such a huge hit that Val Lewton's next two movies were actually kind of put on hold and delayed a bit because this thing was still making money at the box office. So they didn't want to, have another film come out and try to dilute that. They're like, no, let's just let's just milk this raw it's worth, and then we'll get started on those next two movies later. So that's what happened. And then the final little thing I read here, I thought was kind of interesting. Some dude named Lou L. Ostro. This dude's a bit of a D-bag. He was a producer there at RKO, and apparently he had it out for the director and Val Lewton. Like, he had a hard on for him, and was trying to get him fired constantly. And I guess to the point where, like, he felt like this movie was just too slow, and the footage he was seeing he didn't like, so he took the footage and ran to the head of RKO. Definitely a bitch move. And he goes up and shows him the footage, but the guy liked it. He watches it, and he's just like, no, there's nothing wrong with this. Shut your mouth. Let them do their movie. And guess what? It made him a ton of money, so I always hate when I hear stories about producers doing shit like that. I don't know. Because it happens now. It happens now even. Producers will just get their grubby little fucking hands on it. They know better because they had a couple of hits at one time. And it's like, dude, it's not about having hits in the past. It's about the art you're creating now. But they don't see it that way. Anyway, so I think this movie is okay. Definitely too high on this list for me. I would have definitely had this down a little bit lower. Not much. I don't think it's a bad movie. I just remember liking it more, I think, when I watched it before. And when I watch it now, I am bored with it. And it just seems like a lot of the... Like, why is he even dating this girl? Like, before he even marries her, she comes across as crazy. She's already talking about how, she's from a line of people who, if they become aroused, he's going to, they're going to turn to cat people. And he's just like, aroused, you say? You'll turn to a cat person, so we're never going to have sex. Let's get married, and I'll change that. You're an idiot, all right? I don't know. I couldn't get past that. And then the fact that, like, they're doing their best to portray him as, like, still wholesome. So, like, he clearly falls in love with his secretary. He's like, we can't act on this. We got to tell her first. It's like, oh, bullshit. You're going to fucking Fatal Attraction this shit, bang her, and then, have your crazy cat lady wife come after you. I don't know. It was just, there's a lot that I didn't care for. But I thought, and I read a lot of reviews where they didn't like Simone Simon's acting. I thought she did really good. I mean, for what it is. So I thought the performances were good. Again, I thought the story was good. It's not a bad story, but just, I don't know. It does come across, I guess it does come across very melodramatic, and I don't know. It kind of loses me there. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of not with this, but this thing has a 7.2 on IMDb and a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, I can argue with it all I want, but clearly the people like it. So we're gonna just end it with that. So that is number 3, winner of the Bronze Skull Award, Cat People. All right, that brings us to our number 2 film. It is the winner of the Silver Skull Award, and that movie is The Ghost of Frankenstein. So we got another Frankenstein here. It's the second son of the original. Or is it his grandfather? Wow, I don't even remember now. I think it's his father was the original Frankenstein. Supposed to be his Frankenstein, and him and his brother. Because his brother was the one from Ghost of Frankenstein. Or sorry, the son of Frankenstein. He's the other brother. But basically, he plans on putting like a new brain into the monster. And however, Igor, being a dick, decide, you know what, he ain't gonna do it that way. I got other plans, and he steps in. So originally, Boris Karloff was supposed to play the monster, but again, he was so busy doing Arsenic and Old Lace that they could not get him. They could not secure him for this movie, and so they finally changed the role. You know, he's been playing for the past 3 movies, and they gave it to Lon Chaney Jr. This would also be the last time we'd have a solo movie with the Frankenstein monster, because from here on out, we're getting into that Monster Mash territory where everyone's going to be crossing over to each other. So, you know, we're going to have Wolfman next, and then Dracula will be involved, and then we'll have, you know, another, you know, mad scientist and another, you know, a crazy hunchback assistant or whatever. So yeah, this will be the last time that, you know, old Frankenstein monster goes off on his own. Apparently, I don't know why this stuck out to me, but, you know, kind of a nice little story. I guess because they want to make sure the little girl wasn't going to be afraid of him, because he does a lot of scenes with this little girl. Chaney and that young actress really bonded, and I guess, like, even late in her life before she died, she, you know, reflects fondly on these days, and, you know, she said, like, he was just, like, you know, one of the best actors, and just couldn't be even kinder, you know, and just went out of his way to kind of, you know, always bring, like, ice cream to the set, which you can say it out loud in today's context, that sounds creepy as fuck, but I'm taking her word for it that this was all innocent and nice, and I don't know, we need more stories like that, so take a drink. However, when this movie came out, it got bad reviews. One of the big things about this movie that I read from a lot of reviewers, they all kind of say the same thing, that this was, and this is what they're saying, these are their words, not mine, but they're saying this was the year that basically Universal stopped making horror films, and it started churning out low-budget monster movies. And you know what? I can see that. There's some validity in that. You can tell by the amount of reused sets and the corners they cut, and I'll get into that here in a little bit too, but they do, you know, they skimp on a lot here, and they skimp a little bit on the story. Yeah, I'll get to that here in a second. We'll keep going. Some other tidbits here that I got, trivia that I got from this movie. Apparently, a drunk Lon Chaney Jr. In full costume, he got lost on the set. That must have been hilarious. Or scary if you walk on set and Frankenstein's monster is just stumbling around looking for a way out frantically. 4 actors from this movie just came off from filming The Wolfman. Lon Chaney Jr., Bela Lugosi, Ralph Bellamy, and Evelyn Ankers. I will say Ankers. They were all previously in The Wolfman, and now they're here. So Universal using, you know, their best. Turn them out. And I'm a big fan of Evelyn Ankers too. Like, I don't know, after rewatching her there, she did another one before that. I forget what it was, but I don't know. It seems like she's popping up quite a bit now, and I'm really a big fan of it. So really liking her. Chaney hated the makeup, much like Boris Karloff, but I guess he had a worse experience because at one point, I guess, like, it took 6 hours to apply, so when he'd finally get the makeup applied, they just cut for lunch and leave him there. And I'm like, that's fucked up. But also, turns out, at one point he tried to take the makeup off. I forget how long they said that the process was, but he's like, fuck that, started ripping at it. Ends up cutting himself, trying to rip all this shit off. So, and then on top of that, one day, and it's put him out of action for a little bit, he had an allergic reaction to this makeup. So, like, yeah, he did not have a good time with this makeup at all. And so, in the last movie, the son of Frankenstein, the monster, Igor, and 2 of the councilmen died. And then they all just magically reappear in this movie with no explanation. Now, like, the Frankenstein monster, I'll give a pass to, because, like, alright, he somehow survived. Like, you know, he's already dead. So, like, you know, we've already seen him, like, you know, brought back by lightning, and, you know, he was encased in, like, molten lava that hardened over, and they brought him back, you know. So I was like, I'll give him a pass. He's a zombie at this point, but we'll keep bringing him back. Igor, fine. You know, he's resilient. He had a broken neck at one point. Was the last one he had a broken neck in? So it's like, yeah, he somehow keeps making it. But the 2 councilmen, it's like, really? We're going to just gloss over their death? Alright, whatever. So anyways, Dwight Fry. He was the Fritz in the original Frankenstein assistant. Of course, he appears in flashbacks in this movie, but he also appears as one of the villagers who's destroying Frankenstein's castle. And so it's kind of interesting that, you know, he's in this movie twice as 2 different characters. So, I don't know. Kind of a nerdy little thing there, but I found it interesting. And then I mentioned before the movie Night Monster that, you know, the castle they used in this movie, the miniature anyways, that they used to burn down, was actually reused in the Night Monster. So there's that. Speaking of being reused, the sets in this movie, some of them were reused from The Wolfman, because why not? And then, if you look at the poster, it's crazy. Lionel Atwill actually gets top billing over Bela Lugosi and Lon Chaney Jr. Now, don't get me wrong. I said it before. I'll say it again. I'll say it now. Lionel Atwill, I think, is kind of an unsung hero from this era. Now, he may have gotten a lot of praise back then, but I'm sorry, today, no one really knows who Lionel Atwill is, except for, like, hardcore horror fans. And even then, it's like hardcore horror fans who love movies from the 30s and 40s. But, when you say names like Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney, Lon Chaney Jr., whatever, people know those names. No one knows Lionel Atwill. But yet, they must have had more faith in him because, again, he gets top billing over not just, Bela fucking Lugosi, who at that point is already an established horror icon, but also Lon Chaney Jr., who you're building into your next icon, who's already had iconic roles. But Lionel Atwill. Kind of an interesting little thing here, a little aside. Lionel Atwill, he was the doctor in this movie who basically he does a switching and he puts Lugosi's brain, Igor's brain, into Frankenstein monster's body, which is Lon Chaney, thus creating an evil Lon Chaney monster. In the Man-Made Monster, was also the doctor who basically turns Lon Chaney Jr. into a monster as well. So it's just kind of funny, two different movies that came out a year or two apart, or a year apart, and he's the cause of all the chaos in both movies. So again, I love Lionel Atwill. It's great. So anyways, don't get me wrong, I do like this movie. I saw it, way before hitting it now. But I'll be honest with you, whereas with the other movies that we've covered up to this point, they were all very distinct. I remember the plot to most, to all of them. Even if I don't remember every single little thing, I do know them enough to kind of get the gist of them, looking back at them. This was the first time where I'm just like, I don't remember anything from this movie. This was a blur. And this is really, and again, they're right. They're just churning them out at this point. This is where a lot of the movies just kind of blend together for me in the Universal universe. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying these are bad movies. I like this movie. They're a fun watch, but they are forgettable. I feel like the next big one will be Wolfman vs. Frankenstein. I remember, parts of that. Or I remember that movie. I remember parts of whatever the next House movie is. It's either, I think it's House of Dracula, maybe. And I remember, bits of it. But as far as like plot for the rest of them, I have no idea. They blur together. And I feel like that's kind of the problem with this movie. There's nothing really standing out here. Which is unfortunate because, again, Lon Chaney's taking a shot at being the new Frankenstein monster, and I don't know, he's not getting a lot of fanfare, and again, I don't think it's his fault. I think it's, these poorly thrown together movies. Now, like I said, with that said, they're still entertaining, but it is what it is. This movie actually got 6.1, so that's not bad, on IMDb, and a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, so I mean, again, they're not getting bad reviews. They're just kind of getting middle of the road, and that's just unfortunate because the legacy of Universal and the Frankenstein series in general, I just feel like it should be a little bit higher. But again, you get to have every horror series. So I'm not trying to get up on my high horse and act like this should be a masterpiece. I get it. My God, we get the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. I'm just kind of like whatever at this point. But still, you want it to do good, and you still enjoy those movies. I still enjoy Nightmare on Elm Street 5. It's just one of my least favorites. That's all I'm saying. Alrighty, so that leaves us with just one film left. I think I already name dropped it once. If you were paying attention before, you'll know what it is. It's the winner of the Golden Skull Award, our number one horror film of 1942. I'm talking about The Mummy's Tomb. So basically, Karras, who's the mummy in this new kind of run of mummy movies, he gets transported from his homeland with his high priest. And they're going to seek revenge on the group that basically defiled, the tomb of his princess, his beloved princess from the previous film. So Lon Chaney, who has already been the Wolfman, he's already played Frankenstein's monster, is now getting yet another awesome monster put on his belt because he plays the mummy, Karras, in this one. Now we're talking about how cheap that Universal is becoming. Listen to this. They reuse footage from not only the mummy's hand, which I get that, all right. If you're doing a sequel, a legit sequel this time, not just a weird remake spinoff or whatever. You're doing a legit sequel. Yeah, I can see reusing some footage, whatever. But then they also use footage from Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and The Ghost of Frankenstein, which not just in like we're already putting these monsters together. No, there is no crossover here. In fact, there never was with the Mummy, to my knowledge. Maybe in the Abbott Costello one, but I've never seen those. But at this point, there certainly was no connection. No, they were just reusing like village scenes and shit, which is crazy. And then on top of that, the music was. Oh wait, before I get to music, let me get to the house, the set. It's not even a horror film, but the house that was in this movie was used for Uncle Tom's Cabin, and then the music. So the opening score was taken from The Wolfman, and then there was some music throughout the movie that was already ready to be used for another film altogether, which was The Invisible Woman. But they're just like, yeah, we'll take that. It's like, oh, it's not even for you. Nah, it's all right. We'll take it. Just give it to us. Give it to us now. As I mentioned before, this was on a double bill with Night Monster. And then, yeah, as I mentioned before, this had bad reviews, much like The Ghost of Frankenstein. However, I did notice that with the current reviews from, like, more modern times, people are kind of getting more of a break. They still kind of see it as like, this is kind of the downturn of the Mummy series and Universal horror in general, as we've already established with The Ghost of Frankenstein. So, yeah, this was kind of, more of that. Interesting little side note here. This film takes place 30 years after The Mummy's Hand, which would place this in 1970. So this 1942 movie is supposed to be 1970, but they don't make any effort to like make it look futuristic or whatever. I don't know. I just would have loved seeing like more of a disco vibe, I guess, but like a black and white version, just disco vibe. Someone needs to remake The Mummy's Tomb and do that. Just make it ridiculous. And then finally, we had three actors that actually carried over from the last film. Dick Foren, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Wallace Ford, and George Zucco, of course. So yeah, they made the connection, and reprised their characters from the last one. Or they do. George Zucco, I think, is a different character, if I'm not mistaken. He's a different high priest. He's a high priest in the last one, but he's a different one this time. Anyways, yes, the review I have for this one is pretty much the same review I have for The Ghost of Frankenstein. I like it. It's a good movie. It's a fun watch. Rewatching it, I gave it a thumbs up. However, it is forgettable. It's it doesn't stick out. In fact, I mean, even the Mummy's Mummy's Hand was kind of like that because again, it was just a remake of the first one. Very solid, and so I just kind of I don't know. The first Mummy was good, but this one just seems kind of like and I don't know. I couldn't quite fully get on board with it. But with that said, it was still enjoyable, much like The Ghost of Frankenstein. And if I come across it again down the road, I won't be dragging my feet like, oh no, I'll like it. I know when I watch it, I'll like it. I'm just saying, whenever I'm talking great movies, even great mummy movies, this may not make the list just because it's ultimately forgettable. And I feel like, thinking ahead, we got two more, I believe, and I don't really remember much of the other two either. So it is what it is. This film got a 5.5 on IMDb and a 29 Rotten Tomato score. So yeah, that's brutal. So anyways, there you have it. Those are the horror films, the top 10 of 1942. So guys, that was the year in horror 1942. I want to thank you guys for joining me. Come back next time. We're gonna be hitting 1943. We're every month we hit a different one. I say every month. We kind of jump around a little bit. I do want to apologize. I was meant to do this before the holidays, and I just didn't make it. So that's why there's a big gap between 1941 and 1942, and that's why this thing should have been out probably 2-3 weeks ago, but it wasn't. So I apologize for that. However, with that said, I want to thank you guys for joining me. This has been 1942 in Horror. I'm Daniel Richardson, and you're dismissed.